Boop, 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 boop.
It's going to warm up in this room.
The longer I wait, should we set the timer just so we know
how
long, so we don't talk an hour about this?
Yeah.
Oh, right. And then my laughing is too loud every time.
That's okay.
Less laughter.
See, the laughing, though, you can just, if you're going to laugh, that's when you turn away from the mic.
I can't always think that far ahead because the laughter is spontaneous. One of our listeners did ask me if this was scripted.
Cyborg versus robot.
This is Cyborg versus Robot.
Hi.
Hi.
I am 5, pseudo-robot, and zolpidem tartrate.
What? What is that? I don't even know what to say to that. Okay. That's great.
There you go.
Thank you. I'm Christa, and I'm Cyborg.
This time we'll be talking about Real Humans, Episode 3, The Lord Shall Be Our Companion. And this episode we're going to do one of our little diversions from Real Humans, and we're going to talk about the short film, Flawless, by Victoria Duchatelle, before we get to the Real Humans episode.
Yeah.
We'll have a link on our site, Cyborg.
I woke up like this.
Which
Doesn't
one?
it get that stuck in your head? Flawless, I woke up like this.
No, I don't know what that is.
Beyoncé? This film did not get Beyoncé stuck in your head?
No. No.
Oh.
But yeah, you can find the film cyborgversusrobot.com. We'll leave a link up there to that. And it's only 8 minutes. So you can watch it, come back, and hear us talk about it. And you don't have to watch it if you don't want. But it's an interesting little film.
It is an interesting little film. It's a student film, and it's pretty well done. I mean, I went to film school, and our student films were crap. Sorry, class 57 of VFS, whatever, 1999, I don't know when that was. But they were. Our films were not so hot. And this is actually really nicely done. It's shot nicely.
So this film is about, it starts out with a couple having dinner in a cafe.
Yeah. A very cute little sort of first-person shot of them feeding each other cake across the table. And he's all smiley and cute.
Yeah, we're at the end of a first date.
You think so?
He pets her head. And then she just kind of...
Which we all do on first dates.
I do. I'm constantly petting someone's head on first dates.
Hot.
Yeah. Her head kind of like tilts and then...
Which I'm starting to recognize as like a signature artificial life sign.
We are. From Real Humans watching, we've seen a lot of
head tilting.
Yeah.
I mean... I knew she was going to be some kind of robot because you sent me the link to this film and we should watch it for our podcast. So clearly it was going to be it was going to be relevant.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise watching it, it's not clear until he undoes the back of her dress and he says something about like I thought it was going to work this time, and he touches. There's this sort of port on her back that he clearly like powers her down.
It is a nice reveal.
It's a nice reveal. It's not revealed until then that she is a gynoid or some kind of robot. But watching it before that and suspecting that this was going to be part of the film, I was noticing, and this is because Real Humans is so on my mind, that I was like, oh, she's got pretty like flawed skin, you know, she kind of has like a bit of rosacea or something. Like she looks very human.
Yeah.
And
I think that's intentional from like seeing the other.
Well,
everyone's seen it. So the other gynoids in his apartment later on.
Because we find out that he has a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. But what I liked,
crazy.
Especially liked the port makeup. There's sort of 2 ports in the back, and they're just these circular ports or switches. Mm-hmm. He switches her off.
They look a bit like
back.
cupping, like if you go to your acupuncturist.
Do they?
Cupping.
Is that what they look like? Mm-hmm. I haven't been to acupuncture.
No? Oh,
so.
Never?
No.
Oh, that's cool shit.
Well, there you go.
You should go and just have cuppings because you should be like, I want to look like I have ports on my back.
That's
because
exactly
I saw
what
this
I
short
will tell
film
them.
called Flawless that reminds me of the Beyoncé song From Here On. You'll say that too.
In a lot of ways, I found the ports used in this short more convincing than the ports used in Real Humans.
Oh, really? Well, we never see the ports in Real Humans. It's always
they're
just an armpit
USB.
grab.
They're USB ports.
When they power them...
In Real Humans, they're USB ports.
So when they, like, stick their arm in when they stick their hand in the hubot's armpit to power them down, what are they actually...
I mean,
like
there's like an under their skin switch somewhere there.
Right, so there's a switch. Some kind of switch.
Yeah, but the ports to connect
I see
them
what you're saying. Yeah, are USB.
Are USB.
The ones on their neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the Hubot Corporation being so big would have a proprietary connection in the way that iPhones do.
I see.
You can't... I liked these ports better because they were custom, I guess.
Well, he's making these himself, so he's like come up with some sort of... Like, that's what we are led to believe. He's come up with some sort of his own technology.
Yeah.
And we see that his home is actually full of these fembots.
I didn't count how many there were. There's probably like 8.
Yeah, about that. And one is sewing, one is ironing, one is watering the plants, one is playing with the record player, one is pouring him tea, one is stacking shirts and plates. And in all of those activities,
but they're all doing well.
it. Yeah, they're all doing it in a glitchy way. They're pouring the tea on the table, or they're putting the plates in between the t-shirts, or it's all glitchy. Things are all a little haywire. So his home is full of these malfunctioning guest robots.
Did you say guest?
I'm saying guest. No, not guest. I guess robots.
Oh, I guess robots.
The thing that makes them less believable robots, like that they bruise, like that they have.
Well, see, that
hearts.
sort of makes sense to me because it seems like
Flesh.
using some sort of organic skin over top of.
That's what maybe
whatever the robot
there's some
body
weird
is.
mix of real people,
or maybe they are some weird mix, like.
Maybe it's even creepier.
Maybe it's creepier. Maybe these are. Maybe they're not robots at all. Maybe they're people with like replacement parts.
Exactly.
Which is disturbing.
Even worse.
Yeah. But their skin there's skin on a few of them. They have these scars and parts where they're like...
A few of them are bruised. They all have those weird kind of tattoo-y sticker things, but in different places. They're not identical. They are all very feminine. They're all wearing high heels and cute little dresses and a lot of makeup, and they're very cute, very pretty, and all very fake. And
but they're definitely we've got a siren in the background. That'll be fun. They're definitely a girlfriend aesthetic.
Yes. Okay, so his home is full of these maybe modified real women that he has kidnapped and surgically altered, or maybe some kind of robot. But they're all kind of girlfriend material. He basically has a harem of these glitchy, captive creatures. Literally, in some cases, they're in the cage. Yeah.
I guess whether you read that as they're fresh corpses or or broken robots is interesting. I didn't even think of them as that until
I thought of that because the heart and the bruising. Like, how has he built something that can bruise? Yeah, and have human organs? Those are human organs. Like, if you were a mad scientist making robots, how would you create that tissue? I mean, he slices open the muscle.
My thought on that was just that they weren't necessarily human hearts, or they were just a sort of fantastical. They're just like, a heart works this way. Why wouldn't I just use like, I'll use a pig heart or a dog heart or a cow heart or whatever heart works. I don't need to build this. I'm just shortcutting it. Although then that sort of adds more weight to the why don't I just get a real person and replace just the parts of them that need replacing to make them flawless, which I guess all of the...
He's trying to create something flawless.
Yeah.
I look like this. We're not going to be able to clear that Beyoncé line. You're going to have to cut every time I say it.
I'm not worried about it. I'm going to keep it in and, and hope that Beyoncé doesn't come after us.
Yeah.
And even the neighbor, who, as much as I thought that scene didn't fit, was he cute?
Yeah, I think so.
I liked him as an actor.
Listen to me, I'm like, this film is so disturbing the way that they treat women. I'm like, but did you see the cute boy?
Yeah. Yeah, there you are.
There I am, exactly. You're the one patting people on the head on first dates.
I am. No stroking their neck. Stroking their neck. That's what I'm doing on first dates. So another reason I made you watch this student film is because an article came out in The Atlantic by Julie Beck, and it was called A Straight Male History of Sex Dolls. Mm-hmm. Since ancient times, men have been getting it on with synthetic women. Is this just fancy masturbation or something more troubling?
I have not read this article.
That's the
thesis
key
statement.
Key line.
Is that called key line?
I think so.
Like the pie?
Just
kidding.
Yeah, like the pie. Key line pie.
I love that pie.
It's my favorite pie. This part. So, according to Dr. Markan Smith, who is a head of doctoral studies and research leader at the Royal College of Arts School of Humanities, Smith says any sort of non-reproductive sexual behavior has historically been seen as perverse. And these days, we're less okay with emotional attachments that aren't socially productive. And so it seems the distaste is strongest for the small subset of men who consider themselves to be in romantic relationships with the dolls. Okay. By its very nature, the relationship is one-sided. So with the androids, or with the gynoid creatures that we're seeing in Flawless and Real Humans, in Flawless, it is this man trying to create the perfect woman.
And the sort of perfect kind of domestic partner, because as far as having like the woman bringing breakfast and she's ironing and she's sewing, and sort of like 1950s housewife picture.
Exactly, and that's his perfect woman, and he's trying to build in Flawless. He's trying to build that, and he has gone through
multiple iterations,
and just the technology isn't getting there. In Real Humans, something that's interesting, because we talked all about the sex dolls being for men. It is the women in Real Humans who have the romantic relationships with the hubots. It is the men.
The characters we've seen. Women are having emotional attachment to hubots. Men are having
which may or may not be sexual, and the men are just they're basically having maids who they can also use. And the different brands or the different models of hubots are completely designed with that in mind. And I found that when I was reading this article and watching this short, I thought it was really interesting that a really interesting decision that Real Humans made to have the women the only ones who are having romantic relationships with their hubots.
So far,
but it seems that is the norm in the culture. And Hubot Heaven, it's populated by male clientele.
Right.
There's been no overlap.
No.
I wondered about that because I thought that was probably a pretty realistic depiction of how it would be socially accepted. If a man walked around with an android, people would think they're just having sex with it.
Right.
And it seems more socially acceptable for women in the series to have robot boyfriends.
Right.
I don't know. I found that interesting.
It is interesting. I have not thought about that with Real Humans. I mean, I've thought about the people who are having emotional attachment and not, but I hadn't really divided it into the male and female characters.
The romantic versus sexual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I was thinking about. I mean, it goes on. There's more stuff, but the part I found interesting was how it related to the kind of stories we'd see in other shows. We may talk about the Buffy bot sometime.
What I personally want in a listener is someone who's a Buffy fan. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay. Now, back to Real Humans, Episode 3, The Lord Shall Be Our Companion.
Yep.
Again, directed by Harold Hammerl, and it first aired 29th of January, 2012. And we start with our cold open.
Yes.
The overall impression of this episode, though. I want to just mention that.
Okay.
Yes?
What was your overall impression of this episode?
Why, Christa, thank you for asking.
I really would like to know.
Episode 2 did not kind of do it for me. I felt it was a little slow. I liked it, but it was not nearly as good as this episode where things ramp up. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about it. So the cold open, which is Vera stealing the keys from Leonard's pants.
Yep, creepy Vera.
And I want to give you this reveal since
So she steals the keys. She goes into the basement room and she turns and sees Odie, who's got a really creepy expression on his face. He's just standing there. And then cut to Leonard being woken up in bed by this horrible shrieking, screaming. He runs downstairs and Vera's head is being...
I'm going to do an impression using my glass of water. It's like... Ooh.
Yeah, it's like that.
That's pretty good.
That was actually really good. Yeah. It's bringing back the emotional response I was having at the time, which was one of horror. And he runs downstairs. So good. And Odie is repeatedly bashing Vera's head against the floor. It is violent.
And she is the little glitchy noises, which I've come to really like. And then he says...
Well, Leonard stops and says, "It's bad, Odie."
Right.
And then he says, "Do you want lasagna?"
Do you want lasagna?
And Leonard runs over and shuts her down.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's our opening.
That's our opening. I like these cold opens for setting the mood. I think they did it the last episode. They opened with the kind of flashback sequence, where this episode was stuff's gonna go down.
Right. And be bashed repeatedly against the floor.
Yeah. It's gonna go down hard. But you will get some lasagna.
Spoiler. But you're right, there is some menu foreshadowing that takes place in the cold opening.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some negative associations to lasagna for Vera out of that experience. Again, I am possibly over personifying and humanizing Vera. That's how I see them.
She is a PhD model.
She is.
So she is the most advanced hubot model.
And perhaps advanced includes post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
So that's our opening, and then we will come back to Leonard and the Engman family because they're the best part of the episode to me. They have the most going on. That's debatable. The least going on in this episode is with Max and Leo.
Max and Leo, we find out they're at a shipping yard. They're not at a train yard, which I initially thought. And then that's that. And then Max is waiting outside.
Leo has told him to watch guard. And when the person comes home to their little container unit home, Max calls Leo. And Leo... Oh, gosh. Fuck. No. I'm calling them the wrong things.
No, Max
I know.
calls Leo. You said it right.
I said it right.
Because there's a guy outside who wants to come into the
trying to get home. And Max is trying to stop him.
The guy says, "Move it, Pac-Man." So we get to hear one of the derogatory terms.
There are a few times in this episode that hubots are referred to as like Pac-Man. It becomes the sort of like, but I want to say like hick slang because the people who are referring to them as Pac-Mans are a little rough characters. I'm
working class, like the Engman family, who are very proper and very PC.
Yeah, more liberal. They're not going to say the Pac-Man.
After Max pushes the guy threatens to call E-Herb.
And, I think he does. He gets his phone and he calls.
And he's like, "They're going to trash you, Windows brain." And I love the...
So did I. It was like a great slag. It's like, oh, Windows, hey.
Because there's no Apple products in this world.
There's a Dell product placement in this episode.
Yes, there is, later on.
So it's definitely a more PC-based culture.
This is a PC-based culture.
As emphasized by calling him Windows Brain.
So maybe I was right when I said that, maybe Steve Jobs went and worked for the Hubot Corporation in this world.
Maybe.
And that's why
It could be true.
Yeah.
And it's Leo who comes out from the place and hits the guy on the head. And they escape. When the E-Herb unit, who apparently is only staffed by Beatrice and Ove, they're the unit?
No, they're looking at this case. The two people on the run match the description.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay, so it actually makes sense.
So, because they...
Nicely done.
Well, we'll see.
Right.
Where are we next?
We're just talking about Max and Leo.
Because when the detectives do show up, they ask the man who hit them, and they show them a picture of Max and say, can you describe the other one? And he's like a regular work hub. They show him a picture of a Humax G75, which makes sense why they would be called to the shipping yard. They do say about Max that most every homeowner has one.
One of these gnomes in their garage.
Right, they call them gnomes.
Yeah, Beatrice calls them a gnome. And when they're talking to the guy who's been hit on the head, he says to the investigators that this hubot seemed different. He seemed more aware.
Yeah.
And then Ove says more alive, and the guy says no, just different. I found saying more aware strange because Max is a simple creature.
He's pretty simple.
But maybe compared to other hubots.
We haven't seen the other versions of him, so we don't know.
I just was like, really aware?
When they talk about every other homeowner has one, they're like in their garage, like as if it was
like a rake.
Windows 98 computer.
That's okay.
You're done with that. You're done with it. You've moved on to...
I interpret it as something that everyone has one because it's a kind of utility that people use, not because it's one that they used to use. Other things happen. The next time we see Max and Leo, they show up at Hubot Heaven. They want to talk to the manager, who is the Rachel.
Yeah, the Blade Runner Rachel, and we figured that out after recording, where we've been calling her the Noir Lady because she.
Although
when
I hear the Rachel, I just think of the popular '90s haircut. Remember that? Because of Friends, everyone wanted the hair like Rachel.
No, I don't remember that.
Okay.
I don't know what that
You're all like Blade Runner, and I'm all Jennifer Aniston.
It's very similar.
That's why this works so
very
well.
Very similar.
So she's the manager of Hubot Heaven, and they sit down to talk with her. And
she has 2 different colors of eyes.
She does?
She does. You haven't noticed that?
No.
She has 2 different colors of eyes, which is called Heterochromia iridium, which can be a genetic or acquired.
Really? You can acquire that shit?
You can acquire that through like a head injury of some kind.
Oh. Like if Odie smashed your head repeatedly against the floor, your eyes might change color.
If you were a person, your eyes might change color. Okay. I wasn't sure she was a person because I thought she might have been like a foul bot that had been going around. But it turns out she's a person, not a hubot.
A human.
I found out some other people who have Heterochromia iridium.
Oh, really?
Just for fun.
Like famous people?
Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh.
Mila Kunis. Gracie Allen from like George and Gracie.
Aw. I knew, what's it called?
Heterochromia iridium.
So Rachel has that.
She does have that.
And he sits down and he's saying, I guess from this like Hubot Heaven flyer or whatever, that he's like, oh, I see that you guys claim to like work within the law. And she said, oh, are you looking to erase our ID or lift restrictions? We don't do that. Which is, she's clearly they are.
Clearly they do it.
And he says that he'd like to work there for a week in exchange for board and food and power. They walk through the back rooms. And
we see the back rooms. And the back rooms are filled with hubots with collars and strap-ons and everything else. And Rachel, who we still don't know her name, right? So we're calling her Rachel. I had to look up a couple of characters' names in the credits, but I like calling her Rachel. I like the Blade Runner, where she's clearly taken from.
Right.
So she talks about the reasons for the modifications being primarily protection or to make the hubots more fun in bed. Leo says that the kind of modifications that they're doing at Hubot Heaven are like fine-tuning a moped.
Slam.
And then he says he can go right into the source code.
And the DNA.
I
was like, hubots have DNA?
Well, everything. Does everything? Everything organic?
Huh.
So, I'm going to have to check that out. I don't know enough about DNA. But I think everything organic has DNA, which means these hubots have organic parts.
Right, and he's... Right, that would mean that. And he says, I can create a more living individual. And so they get set up in this back room. At one point, he opens his Dell laptop.
He does.
He starts working on this tattooed, collared hubot.
Right.
And I think the last time we see Leo in the episode is he's lying in the bed and looking at a photo of Mimi. Has another flashback. Actually, what I thought was, there are 2 things I want to say.
Okay.
Number 1, the information in the flashback I thought was helpful because when we see the flashback in the last episode, I did think it was curious that while the mom is struggling in the water and Mimi just stands watching from the beach. And when I watched it, I was like, why isn't she doing anything? And then in this flashback, it isn't until Leo jumps in and until he starts to cry for help that she reacts. Like, that's suddenly what then triggers her to respond. Like, she isn't programmed to respond to the mother's cries for help.
No.
But when the kid is crying for help, she starts running towards the water and she jumps in, rescues him, lays his body on the beach, and the dad comes out and pushes her aside, lifts his son's body, and then you see her kind of fall on the side, and she's like in shock, or she's glitching because she got wet. But I thought, I mean, as far as like, I thought it was useful, the additional information in the flashback, because I did wonder why she wasn't doing anything about the drowning person.
Okay,
that hadn't crossed your mind.
Well, at that point, I assumed that hubots couldn't get wet.
Huh.
I didn't think they could swim.
Right.
They don't necessarily need to be waterproof. We have a cat.
Which is maybe why they sponge bathe, because we've already established that she sponge bathes. But also seeing this, where she jumps into the water and where she has what would be, again, if she were human, a traumatic experience of saving the kid.
Or not traumatic because she's a computer.
I know. It is hard for me to not think about these characters without relating my own personal experience. The second thing I want to say, what were we just talking about? Oh, second thing, I have been interpreting Leo and Mimi's relationship as a romantic relationship, because the first time we met Mimi, where she's like, I love you, and she's dying on the grass, and this last scene in this episode where he's gazing at her photo,
does he say that he loves her back in the first episode?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And you pointed out to me that there's actually nothing that is explicit about them having that kind of relationship, and I've totally been making that up. Maybe.
He was a 10-year-old boy when he got Mimi, and he's very fond of her. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why that relationship can't be the same as what Odie and Leonard have. Yeah. Where there's that same sort of closeness. That Mimi is Leo's nanny, best friend, only family he has left.
Right.
So that's not 100% clear yet, but I don't think that it's a romantic relationship.
Which I had thought it was.
Or a sexual relationship.
Right.
I don't think that Leo and Max have a romantic relationship.
No, not even a budding romantic relationship.
Not even a budding one.
And you don't think that Mimi and Leo have. You just think that they're family.
I think they're sort of family. I don't think we've seen a romantic relationship with any male characters on Real Humans.
Right, which is what made me think of it, because you said that none of the male characters are having romantic relationships with the female. I'm just going to repeat what you said, because that's what I do. And I said, what? No, Leo and Mimi. And I feel like a bad person for, like, assuming or having interpreted that it was simply... That's some, like, weird hetero bias that I didn't know I had. What I mean by that is I often get frustrated if I'm out with, like, a male friend and people assume we're dating because it's male-female. But then here I've made this assumption about Leo and Mimi, that because it's male-female and that because she said I love you, that it's romantic. You
are so much like Flash, who has problems recognizing queer relationships.
I know.
Do you want to...
I'm not like that.
You're just like that. Do you want to go back and talk about the... do you want to talk about the rest of the rogue, the children of David Escher?
Yeah, let's talk about them.
Since, I mean, clearly you want to talk about...
I don't actually think that I have that bias. I just think that's what came to mind when I realized I thought that's what was happening with the relationship.
So this part is a bit of a continuity problem.
Because they replay a scene from the last episode.
They replay a scene from the last episode where the vicar, whose name is Asa, had to look that up because it has not been mentioned yet.
Did they say it in this episode, though?
Near the end.
Her partner says it.
So she walks into the church and looks at the row of hubots charging, although now they're not charging. They were charging in the previous episode because we saw the little lights lighting up. But in this episode, we find out that the power is out And there's no fuses even kept at the church. They're all kept at the parish house.
Yeah, that part's a little confusing.
So, at least for this episode, they were running as they went. Because this was not planned. It was a little bit of a, I hope they don't remember from last episode what we did. And that they were clearly charging.
Yeah.
When they came
into the they regrouped a little bit.
Yeah.
And it replays the moment where she turns and bumps into Niska and is surprised by seeing her there.
Yeah.
And Niska says, we need power and we need a place to stay.
I love how Niska shows that she's a hubot to the vicar, or the priest. Just by reaching into her jacket, pulling out the retractable cord, drawing it out, showing it, and then letting it go, and it coils back up.
Yeah. And she goes, and says, where's your owner? And Niska says, we're liberated. No one owns us.
Yeah. We belong to us.
We belong to us.
We know it's illegal, and if they find us, we'll be destroyed. And then Fred pipes in, and he's like, we agree that regular hubots should be traceable to an owner, but we're different.
Yeah. But you saying that they clearly know that people hate them.
I think what Fred thinks is if they can explain their situation in a way
that people will be good to them. You're right, and that's what he's doing there. He's trying to
explain his way out and just be like, I believe in the last episode he says, if we let them know that we are the direct creations of David Escher,
right,
who seems to be maybe the guy who sold the technology and then continued doing work on his own and made these next level hubots, or modified,
that too,
modified other hubots. We haven't seen that. I'm speculating.
Okay.
Anyway, Fred thinks he can explain his way out.
He thinks they can explain it. They appeal to Essa, and she takes them back to their house, leads them up to the attic.
But we meet the vicar's wife, Eva.
Yes.
For the first time.
Mm-hmm. Who is reluctant and cautious about having these guests in her home. Yeah. When Asa guides them upstairs and they can plug in there. She has a Bible on the table for them.
She just sort of puts it down.
I'm just gonna leave this here for you.
It's like, here's your Bible, which you'll need along with your extension cord.
The basics.
And then I guess rolling into Roger.
We're gonna go over to Roger now. Okay.
Because we don't get to see Teresa in this episode, do we?
Nope, she's not in it.
No.
Briefly, very briefly, when he listens to the voicemail.
Right, her voice is in it.
But they cut to a shot of her at dinner.
Right, having a good time.
Yep.
With her new family.
Yep.
Roger shows up to his Real Humans meeting, and there's this big reveal that Beatrice is part of the Real Humans movement. They're having this talk, they're having this argument about what to do with the Real Humans, and we meet our other Real Human character, Malta.
Fanatic, Malta. And during this meeting, Beatrice and Malta are both quite vocal about their feelings. The person facilitating the meeting is proposing that the organization perhaps advocate for a kind of compromise in the interest of getting more followers.
We'll let them clean up nuclear waste dumps.
Right.
We'll let them go into hazardous situations where humans can't go.
Mm-hmm. And you see Roger keeps trying to sort of like interject and say something in the meeting.
Yeah.
But these more sort of vocal,
assertive
people.
Beatrice is among them.
Beatrice is among them. It's really those two. So that after the meeting, he goes and approaches them in the sort of coffee and cookies portion of the Real Humans
where
meeting.
Beatrice and Malta are sort of talking amongst themselves. And I wrote this down, the phrase Hubot huggers, and I can't remember if Hubot huggers was referring to the Real Humans group or to people who like Hubots.
It's people who like Hubots.
Okay.
Roger starts to say that the meeting he was feeling warmer about it. Beatrice says it's a bit soft, and he says like a sewing circle. Okay. And then they're both like, oh, we like this guy. And they go outside and agree to sort of meet separately because clearly they have something in common. Addresses only, no phone numbers.
Yeah, Roger writes down his address. Yeah. I was wondering at this point in the show, Beatrice works for eHerb because it's Hubot-related crimes, which I would guess would also mean crimes against hubots? Or is it crimes committed by hubots? Because I would assume that in this world, where hubots are all programmed, that hubot-related crime would largely be crimes against people's hubots.
That would be assuming that the hubots have some kind of personhood. I don't think it's established that you can commit a crime against a hubot.
The same way that somebody would investigate car thefts.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
If that would fall under the eHerb unit as well.
I would think it would largely be that.
That's a good question, Vibe.
Because we've seen that the Asimov's laws apply here. That hubots cannot hurt humans.
Nope.
They cannot.
But they may well get stolen, or and then
they might get stolen. They may be used by other people to rob banks, but they can't hurt humans. And if everyone knows that, well, I guess modified
or modificated.
The foul bots and fet bots, the fetish bots, would fall under their jurisdiction. But I would also wonder if they are also would be the group that intercepts groups like real humans who are trying to potentially destroy other people's hubots. Even though we haven't seen any evidence that this group does that.
I feel like they're not that guerrilla.
No, they seem like a legislative group.
Yeah, they have stickers.
They want to write letters and try and change policy and legislation.
Yes.
They are not an activist group in the guerrilla sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. After the meeting, Roger gets in his car and sees he has a voicemail from Teresa.
From Kevin.
Oh, it says that Kevin is phoned, exactly, so he listens to it, but it's actually Teresa that says, I heard your messages, we've changed our number, we're moving on, I suggest you do as well.
And she suggests he try net dating.
He's just trying net dating. So cold. And that there's someone for everyone, she truly believes that, which is where it cuts to this sort of parallel scene where we see... Teresa having dinner with Rick and Kevin and laughing. And I don't know if that's what he's imagining or they're saying...
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, if that's sort of what they're...
They've sort of forgotten about him, or at least Teresa has. And then we see a very, 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 very tiny clip of Roger crying.
He starts to cry, puts his hand to his face, and he crumbles.
And they cut away very quickly.
It's sad. We all know what it's like to cry in our car.
Do we?
It's always very
I haven't really had a
lonely
car. I've mainly lived in cities with lots of public transit. So
oh, okay. So you cry on public transit.
I cry on public transit.
Okay.
Every day. Every day. And I guess we'd be going back to
the roads.
We go back to the.
You don't want to finish this. I do.
We go back to the parish house.
You're doing this more linearly.
I'm doing it a little more linearly, although the timeline doesn't quite work for the Beatrice. She's investigating this crime, and then all of a sudden she's at this Real Humans meeting. But I never got a sense that she's separated from her partner. She just sort of shows up at this meeting, and then...
Yeah, we don't know if it's like the same day or some other time.
No.
And, we don't really know where it fits in time-wise. You're right.
Timeline because it feels like the parish house all happens over an afternoon. And the timeline's a little bit wonky in this episode. But we're back at the parish house where we see Gordon and Flash.
Who are the twins.
You are the twins.
And she's flipping through a magazine and daydreaming about the house she's going to have and marriage and children. You're grabbing some paperwork. What is it?
I'm Flash, who I had to look up because we haven't gotten her name yet. I think I miscalled her Marilyn.
Yeah, last time we knew that the two
Which
female...
I think calling the blonde Barbie-looking character Marilyn seemed like a safe bet in the cast list. But I looked up Josephine Alhanko is the actress, and she is a former Miss Sweden.
Oh, she is. Because I read something in reading about the show where they were like, it has a former Miss Sweden in it. And I was like, which one? But her.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is Flash. She is also Josephine. The first person. She ranked in Miss Universe. Maybe the first person in a long time that's done that. Anyway,
the first Swedish person?
First
The
Swedish person.
I was like,
There have been other people. There's never been
no
a
one else
woman that's
has
won
ranked.
Miss Universe. Or ranked. She didn't win, nor did anyone else. She's the first person.
She's the first person to
Yeah.
rank in Miss Universe in a long time.
Yeah.
Every time they have that competition, they're like, we don't even have a top 20.
Yeah, we're like, we've looked at you.
We have scanned the universe, and we cannot come up with a top 20.
Yeah.
So Sweden doesn't place well in Miss Universe historically.
No.
Interesting. So they're sitting there, they're flipping through the magazine, and she says, to Gordon, she says, you should get a wife. And he says, I will have no children and no wife. And that he feels lonely hearing her talk about this life she's going to have. And
Right.
and she says, no, we're going to get through this together. And I love when he asks, do you understand what it is we're supposed to get through? Which is a good question in general.
Yeah. Oh, see, well, I clicked onto different things because I really liked when Flash picks up a magazine, looks through it, and thinks the associations of doesn't realize it's a lifestyles magazine. It's like, this is a house I could move into because no one lives there.
Right.
Just
It's cute.
it's cute.
She is cute and painting a rosy picture.
Gordon says,
And he says something about the kitchen. And he goes,
yeah,
"We
why,
don't need a kitchen."
why do we need a kitchen?
And she's like,
like,
"Because we'll have human friends."
And we find out that Flash wants to meet a human man and have 5 kids. And Gordon again looks confused and goes, "You can't have kids."
At that point, Ava comes home with the newspaper, and the headline says the murders might have been committed by hubots, and kind of points to it and suggesting to Asa that maybe these hubots that they're housing or have something to do with this crime.
Right.
Ava goes upstairs and asks them. Miska denies it, reiterates that they don't have the ability to hurt humans.
Which we've seen her do. And dogs.
And dogs. And Ava says, well, I'll have to talk to my wife. And
It cuts to Flash.
having this little glitchy, tilts her head, and she's like...
She has that little sound.
The little
where
glitchy confused sound.
It's not a glitchy confused sound. It is a, when I have new information that gets stored, you hear a little bloop bloop.
It's a I'm processing sound?
We saw it before when Roger did the up and down trick.
Oh.
It went...
I was
and-
about to say it's like a little end of the line typewriter sound. Ding. But it's just
Yeah.
also upload complete.
And Ace asks, who are you really?
And it cuts to Flash and Gordon and Marilyn standing there all just kind of staring blankly, and Gordon holding the Bible against his chest, and it's a great, they sort of hold the shot a little long of them just kind of blinking.
They want you to see that Bible. They're not pointing it out, but
Notice the Bible. So later Flash asks Niska about that Asa saying that she was married, and she's like, she called the other woman her wife. Like, do you think they're lying? Can we trust these women?
they're both female. How does that work?
Yep.
And then Asa and Eva are having a little bit of a discussion. Eva tries to point out, she makes some reference to like the Bible saying these things are abominations. I don't know what verses they're pulling from that. And Asa retaliates with, our relationship, you could also find stuff that's going to condemn you and me, and
I'm forced to follow my heart, otherwise they would deny everything I believe in.
Yeah. So that's where that stands. So, Roger. The address that Roger gave before, Beatrice and Malta show up together to...
They don't show up
They
together.
don't show up together.
Malta is sitting outside of Roger's house in his car waiting, and he watches Beatrice arrive and waits for her to go in before he goes in himself.
Oh, that's interesting. I missed that.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was... that
Curious.
He is a suspicious man.
Okay.
And then he arrives with coffee.
Pac-Man
free coffee. And it has when you see Roger making it, first of all, he goes into his kitchen, dumps the coffee he's already made, and then there's this little logo on it that it hasn't been touched by Hubot hands.
It's the no Hubots.
Yeah, it's like an organic...
We saw it in the hotel. And we find out that Malta's a mailman. Roger talks about... that his warehouse is mainly electronics and chemicals. So we finally know
what's being processed
what
there.
he is, and he's one of the supervisors.
And Beatrice says she's a cop.
Yep, she says she is with the Office of Hubot-Related Crime, EHRB, which is Enheten Hubot Related Brottslighet.
Yeah, it is.
Found that out. Because that's been driving me crazy, because there are some places on the web which call it EHUB, and there are some places which call it EHRB.
EHRB. The subtitles
so
say
now
EHRB.
we know EHRB, and hätten hubots relatardet brottslighet.
You are going to
I
get
don't know
better
if
at
I'm
saying
going to
that.
do. My Swedish is terrible, so
think
somebody
it's
wants to
improving.
tell me how to say it properly. I'm happy to hear it.
I feel like I'm very slowly learning about this language.
Give me some Swedish phrases.
Well,
I am calling you on this right now.
okay, I will tell you. Well, the Swedish phrase that stood out for me in this episode, because when I heard it, I went, I've heard that before, which is Sov Got, and which is sleep well.
Oh, okay.
And when I heard it said in this episode, which is Sov Got, Leonard, Sov Got, a song popped into my head that I know from Jewel's 2009 album Lullabies, in which she sings a lullaby in Swedish. Apparently Jewel had for a while a Swedish lover, and attempted to learn her sweetheart's mother tongue, and in turn wrote a lullaby. Sov Got.
That's as much as you're going to do.
I know it. Except Vackra Delfin. I remember the tune. Sov Got, jag vida varje. Whatever, pretty little
Okay.
Jewel song.
I wonder if that shows up in any of her poetry anthologies.
Swedish?
Yeah.
If she was writing love poems for her Swedish lover?
I wonder if she was.
Someone's going to have to refer to her poetry and find
if
out.
Jewel's book of poetry has been translated into Swedish.
Also a good question.
We can find this out.
We'll find that out
later.
later.
Put the links up on the website. Anyway, during this meeting...
Yeah, well, they talk about wanting to sort of take action. They have to do something. The whole time, I feel like Roger has a kind of reluctance. He's interested, and he's been established as having very strong anti-Hubot feelings. I think he's just a little unsure of, like, wow, am I actually doing this? Because Malta says we have to, if this has to be primary, our lives, our work, everything has to come second to this cause if we're going to break the laws of the fucking Pac-Man society.
Well, I think it's that
and they make a pact.
They do.
This is a bigger step for him. It's not just fucking a bit with the local. It's committing to something maybe more drastic. And maybe more public.
And we've seen him assault Rick, but that was his property, or his wife's property, or shared property. And I do think that there's a definite line in that's shown, especially in this episode, where even characters that love their hubots will still say they're robots, which we'll see in the Hans and Inger scene.
Right. You know, one little detail I liked about this at his house, I mean, his house is like dusty and the curtains are drawn. Yeah. And even though he makes the new coffee, they've been sitting there a while, and then Malta asks if he can pour it himself. And Roger says, oh, right, sorry. And it's just sort of like painting how he's now this single guy and he doesn't have his wife or Rick to like go through the host motions that he's maybe not that familiar with. It was just like this little, I liked that little, oh, Roger, you didn't even pour the coffee.
Is that a thing? Because I think now if I were to bring a
carafe,
a pot of tea to a table,
you know, I would not expect you to pour tea for me. I would feel comfortable helping myself. But if it was my first time, like at your house, and you had like brought out tea to the table,
you don't want to be seen as rude. I don't
know. It's maybe
they do dig into the cookies though. They don't wait for that, which I think is good. Or do they? Oh, I'm gonna have to rewatch that scene.
So that's Roger, and that's and also Beatrice, as far as seeing her, that she is clearly doing some work related to her police job that is also potentially contrary to her police job.
Yeah. But anyways, Beatrice goes back to work. Again, the timeline is weird. She's with Ova. They get to the parish house. They ask if they have any hubots. And then Ova does this very nice cop thing of saying, B, you love old houses, don't you? Maybe you can look around.
Right. So natural. Actually, they play out that kind of cop manipulation well when Ava and Asa, who are clearly uncomfortable and worried that
they're going to discover the hubots in their attic.
Asa comes up with the brilliant plan of like, oh, we should tell them about the rotting floor in the attic. And her not kind of piecing together, like, that's going to draw attention to the attic. Yeah. But him knowing that now clearly they should look at him, he shouts up the stairs and gives that clue to his partner. So they show up at the house to investigate it. I think just because... Why did they know to go to
Well, they're
house?
Still investigating that area.
So okay, so it's just because they're asking...
They say that somebody saw them go into the church.
Right. and that therefore they're talking to the priest to find
Yeah.
out more. We see Bee poking around the house. She does go into the attic, or actually she just stands at the bottom of the stairs and she looks up and she makes eye contact with Niska.
I have a suspicion
Okay.
about B,
Do you?
which is probably wrong.
But commit to it.
I'm going to commit to it. I think she may be a hubot.
Really?
Because when she stares at Niska, they both have blank expressions where they're not actually communicating anything to each other. They're just looking at each other, registering who each other is.
Well, that's how Niska looks at everybody. She just stares them down.
She does. I'm 90% sure I am wrong about the suspicion.
I had a moment of looking at Beatrice, though, because her hair is kind of... She's got that sort of... The way that they're showing pretty or the kind of perfect appearance, where I was like, she looks a bit like a hubot because she's very manicured. And that's not necessarily strange for, like, a female character to be so plucked, but, like, she looks a little bit how they depict the hubots as far as appearance. And it actually crossed my mind, too.
I mean, if she is, her partner doesn't know about it because he asked her if she was a real human.
And if she is, why the hate on for the hubots?
Although her partner's sort of funny, he's got this weird sense of humor, this kind of dark sense of humor that he's shown a little bit of. So it would not surprise me if he was aware that she was a hubot and just says, "Are you a real human? Are you a real human? And would you keep a hubot?" Again, I think I'm wrong.
I think we're both wrong, because I thought it too. But I thought it earlier in the episode, and I'd forgotten that thought by the time the exchange with her at the bottom of the attic stairs happened. Because she comes downstairs, and she doesn't say anything. She says, "Let's just leave, there's nothing here."
Here's the thing that made me think that she might be a hubot. And again, dumb thing. She steals a wedding photo.
She does. That was curious.
That was the thing that made me think that, is they talked about hubots having no history. The day you're turned on is the day your memories start.
Yeah.
And everything gets built from there. But when I saw Beatrice pick up this wedding photo, I thought, she sees a backstory. Something that she can add to a collection that is...
Oh.
I don't know, this is me speculating, and...
That's more than I did. I was just like, why is she doing that? And then moved on.
I just was trying to think of the reason from like a narrative standpoint, and the only thing I could get to was that possible hubot, and this is something she could just put in her house.
As sort of trying to invent a backstory. Interesting.
She's also this detective, and she's part of this like more aggressive Real Humans group, where she also may need to have a background. So I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, I was curious, and I just sort of filed it away as something that'll make sense later.
Right.
I did assume that the reason she doesn't tell her partner that she saw Niska in the attic, because she wants to take action through her newly formed vigilante group.
Maybe.
That she's sort of filing like, oh, these people have illegal hubots, and that she feels more passionate about taking action with her group as opposed to through her work. That's what I thought.
And when they do leave the house, Ova says that they did match the prints on the crowbar to the guy who murdered...
i.e. Leo's prints.
Leo's prints.
And they know that Leo was at the scene of the crime of the murder.
Right.
And right now they're acting on that it was a human who committed those crimes.
And since hubots, as everyone knows, can't harm
people,
humans,
yeah.
Why are they following these hubots that are just wandering off into the woods rather than actually following the murderer?
Yeah.
So that made sense to me.
Yeah.
So now we only have the Engman family to talk about?
But that's tons.
Oh, I know, it's tons. And we're going long.
We're talking a lot.
Yeah. Right up to the top of the show, right after the credits, where they're in their kitchen.
Yep, breakfast table.
Mm-hmm.
And Inga says, I have something to say. She gets everyone's attention and tells them, I think we should keep her.
Yeah.
To which Han says, applaud for Mama!
Which is so dorky. I
love it too. And then she says, but she has some terms, that they should treat her like a human, and that she should have nights off, and that she won't make the kids' beds, and she won't scratch backs, and it's about dignity. And they're all kind of scoffing and being like, okay, you're being ridiculous. But
Inger seems to be struggling to articulate what she means. Like, even when I was writing down the part where I know our subtitles say I want us to treat her like a human, and I was thinking that word is probably not quite right. And it was like maybe like a person.
Right.
And
I find it really interesting because in the first episode she was like, no hubots, no. They're not people. I don't want our kids to be raised by a machine. And now that she's had some experience, she is very quickly humanizing and trying to give human qualities to Manita as a way, I think, to understand. I think it's going to be the only way she can actually understand or live with a hubot because she can't otherwise reconcile it, really.
Right.
So she's trying to figure out a way that this makes sense to her.
And she clearly hasn't figured it out.
No, because then the end of that scene is she's just made this pitch for, like, Manita's rights. And
Which I want to state again that when you say Manita, you mean Mimi Anita.
I do.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, that's done. We're gonna go see Grandpa today, and let's bring
swimming.
and let's bring Mimi Anita. To which Hans sort of makes a face because there's no seats, and then Inga says, "Oh, we can put her in the trunk
if we drive slow."
Yeah. So they're like,
so you don't want to treat her like a person. Yeah, and the next time we see them, they are knocking on the door at Leonard's, and
who's flustered because he has just spent a morning where Odie kicked the shit out of Vera, and he knows that this
broke his hubot, his
very expensive hubot, and he maybe forgot that they were coming over, and he's like, "Oh,
I don't think he knew. I think it was a surprise. I think it was a surprise.
Oh, really?
Visit. We're going to go surprise your grandfather, take him out for the day. I get the impression that they have a pretty separate life, and they're not all that interested in.
Which is, to me, why it was like a planned visit. It was like, okay, this is that Sunday where we go see him.
Yeah.
So he lets them in. He's making coffee. When he meets Anita, he says, "Oh, you're the freebie," which she doesn't understand.
Yeah. And he insists that Vera is charging.
Yeah, she's charging.
Charging.
Yeah, and Hans is suspicious. Why is that happening during the day? Sorry, I was just pausing because I suddenly thought like we could probably summarize all of this more briefly, and if I start saying more, I'm going to get too...
It's okay, you can say more. So they, anyway, they go to check on Vera, and Hans discovers...
Before they go to check on Hera...
Vera.
Or Shira.
You're going to talk
Princess
about the
Power.
headbands.
No. I have nothing to say.
Inger points out to Hans that, look, she changed her headband.
She said that?
Yeah.
And
you didn't notice it, of course.
No.
So why would you notice headbands?
No reason.
Yeah. This is why you held up, or speeding up this part for it. Well, I just wanted to skip for that and go straight to Hans goes to check on Vera.
Hans goes to check on Vera. Inga has made this comment where she's noticing things about Anita, and Hans is like, she doesn't care about her headband. What are you talking about? They go to check on Vera. Vera's actually been shut down. Hans starts her up, and she's got the year wrong. She thinks it's 1989.
Well, Hans says that she is not supposed to be turned off.
Not ever.
Ever.
Because, something could happen, and why would Leonard do
and
that?
Leonard is the whole time saying, oh, well, let's just go have coffee. We'll just leave her. She'll be fine.
Yeah. And Hans, exasperated, is like, oh, I've got to reinstall this. You guys go to the beach without me. So the family goes to the beach.
Leonard insists that he just turned her off.
Yeah.
And then says maybe it's the heat.
I know. He's reaching.
He's reaching. It's really funny.
He's really trying to cover his butt.
So Hans has to stay at the house. They have to drive to the beach. And Leonard stays behind as well.
Yeah. At the beach...
Can I just say this? Because
Did you start singing Mimi at the beach again?
I wanted to say that it was Inger and Mimi on the beach.
Good.
That's all.
Nice. It was Inger and Mimi on the beach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Matilda and Tobe and Sophia.
Right. Don't care about that.
Doesn't fit into the lyrics as well.
Not at all.
So the family goes to the beach. Inga keeps sort of probing Anita about, like, oh, do you remember the store you came from? Would you like to go? Would you like to go shopping?
And Inger brought us
I brought this bathing suit for you. And Matilda is like, Mom, this is, like, don't be one of those embarrassing people who dresses up your hubot.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay.
And she does the audible rolling of the eyes.
Yeah, and, lies down to work on her tan.
Yeah.
And then when Toby and Sophia and Inger are playing in the water, and Toby says, "Mom," and they look up and they see that Anita has put on the bathing suit and is standing at the edge of the water, and she's stepping in and stepping out, stepping in, and stepping out.
We're hearing Leo's name.
We're hearing the flashback sounds from the water scene of Leo running into the water.
Which you had been wondering if she would start to remember her past, and now we're seeing it. Is this the first time we see it?
I think so.
So she starts seeing that, and then we're back at the house where Hans is troubleshooting Vera.
He's got the Vera manual.
He's got
the
little
iPad
thing.
Except it's not an iPad. It's like a thick tablet. Because this is a PC world. With cumbersome tablets.
And he has to go through these questions that he asks her, and it's the first one is, where do you live? And she says, here. And he pushes the little thumbs up button. It's like,
check.
Bing. It's all right. And then he says, who else lives in this house? And she says, Leonard. And he's kind of about to hit the thumb. And Vera continues, and the other one.
Mama.
In the basement. Did you notice that on the desk, Leonard has a computer that takes floppy disks?
I didn't. How charming. Oh, he's so cute.
That's all. So Hans decides he says to Vera, show me where this man lives. And Vera takes him down the stairs, points at the workroom, and says he lives in there.
And then gives a bang-on description of Odie's wardrobe. And
before ending the sentence with he's a hubot. And then they're back sitting in the kitchen again.
I did notice the kitchen.
This is after the Ingers come back, so they clearly
they
have
come
to
back from
wait
the beach
until they come back to have a talk with her father.
It is her father, and they're questioning Leonard. He's lying.
He's good at lying.
He's good at lying. Inga is, she's kind of like looking very concerned and saying, "We believe you, Dad." And Hans is kind of pushing.
He's like, "Well, where's the receipt?"
Mm-hmm.
He was like,
For the recycling.
He's like, "Why would I need it?"
And then why would you lock the basement? It's like, because her incessant cleaning. Oh God, the cleaning. And Inga's like, okay, I understand.
And why would you have described Odie so perfectly? And it's like, I showed Vera pictures of him.
He's got an answer for everything. But then he kind of almost slips and says, but I used that space for my model boats. And Hans is like, oh, I would like to see those. Which I was like, wait a minute, this is your father-in-law and you never realized he had a model boat
He knows he
hobby?
likes them. He doesn't know that he makes them.
Okay.
Which seems semi-believable that he may have been a collector who, while he was working, collected, and then when he retired, took up the hobby for himself.
Okay. But it's now the reason to go downstairs, because Hans wants to see the boat.
Yeah.
Leonard seems reluctant, and they go in there, and Hans is poking around, doesn't see Odie.
But he does see a figure in a shower stall.
He does, but when he pulls open the door, it's just a hanger with a shirt.
With a dumb face.
Yeah.
A weird dumb face.
And, but that seems to sort of calm Hans's own doubts. He's like, oh, okay, I was being suspicious. Everything's fine. Inga has this conversation with Vera saying, okay, here's the rules. Like, that's my dad's private space. He's going to keep the door locked. You have to respect that. And you're going to have to give him lasagna once a week.
Yeah.
The foreshadowed lasagna.
Yeah.
And, you're just going to have to deal. I think she actually said deal with it.
Leonard leaves the room by saying, you can start with the lasagna now.
And Leonard gets a bit smug after that.
He's smug all the time.
He's smug all the time.
I like him. This brought up, though, a question for me. Who's the owner of Vera?
I wondered that, too, because I was like, why is she the one addressing Vera? But they are...
Because otherwise Leonard could just reprogram.
He could have had that conversation, too. I think Hans and Inga did buy him the Hubo. They did buy it. They spent the money.
Yeah. So
they
they're
picked
the owners.
Vera out. I think they're the owners. They're giving her the talking to, and Leonard is kind of standing by and accepting.
Yeah. Either way, Leonard gets his lasagna.
And he's sitting at the table, and he's being very little snippy with Vera and saying,
yes, he is.
I looked at your secondhand value online, and you're worth more for parts. And he feels a bit more in control of her now because he is drinking his bottle of wine. And she just tilts her head and says, oh, I only want what's best for Leonard. Yeah. And he's getting very sleepy.
He goes to bed.
He goes off to bed, and she says, Sov Got, Leonard, Sov Got. And you cue Jewel in your mind. And then they show through a nice cupboard perspective shot that she has given him sleeping pills.
Yep. Something
because she's conniving.
Yes. But it's a product called Stillnocht, or Zolpidem tartrate.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for explaining that.
Which is used to treat short-term insomnia.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
Cut to Toei.
Oh, Toei.
Doing a little internet research and
Yeah.
watching a video that's in English.
Yeah. Well, it seems like all of the product information from Hubot for the hubots
Is in English. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's watching this video and the voiceover is saying, it's very simple. You apply the erotic strip or chip into the armpit and perform an easy reset. So he's looking up how to get the sexy services.
And they do say that the erotic chip is just beside the USB exit.
Right.
So it is clearly USB. And then...
Intercourse with your hubot.
Oh, I got
you
this.
can
I've got it.
squeeze the hips to have
I've
it
got
shift.
the quote.
Okay, what's the quote?
By squeezing the hips of your hubot during intercourse, you may shift from your traditional position to oral or even anal.
Oh. See,
Yeah.
I found that odd because you can actually talk to the hubots about most things you want them to do. So I feel like when you're able to just tell them, why would you have to squeeze their hips?
Right, but again, this gets to the sexual relationship versus romantic relationships, where that voiceover is very clearly geared towards a male consumer.
Oh, saying you don't have to...
Well, the sexual aspects is shift from traditional position
Traditional.
with your hubot to oral or even anal, which perhaps I'm just making some assumptions for like hetero things, and you may have had to choose your preference before getting into the login screen. I have no idea, but it was clearly male geared, and we're seeing the like sexual. And we haven't seen Teresa this episode, but her interest in Rick is primarily romantic.
But Pilar is having sex with Bo.
We have not seen...
I still think it's weird that they're instructing people to squeeze the hips as opposed to just
Telling
having
them
like
what
the
to
voice
do.
command.
We don't want
Although
to.
any future lover of mine, if I squeeze your hips, now you know.
You squeeze their
If
hips.
I squeeze their hips, it's because
Wow.
I think I'm doing it with a hubot.
Okay.
Just general.
Maybe don't point them to this episode. Anyway, while Tobe is looking up stuff on the net, Hans and Inger go shopping for headbands.
No, while Tobe's looking stuff up on the net, Hans and Inger are doing it.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah, because to the scene in the mirror, and you're like, oh, who's having sex? And then they have this cute little conversation about...
They talk about going shopping.
They talk about going shopping, and Hans is still kind of laughing at her, saying, like, she's our housekeeper. And then he says, do you know what they call people like you who have relationships? And they call you... Hoobies. And
he's not pleased about Inger's, like...
He finds it odd. I think he's really surprised that she's having this reaction.
He says she's a housekeeper, not company.
Yeah.
And she's a computer.
Yeah.
He's okay saying she, and even in the earlier scene where they talk about treating her like a person, it's kind of like, I'll indulge your weirdness.
Right. And here he still is like, oh man, what are you talking about? And she says, don't worry, I won't leave you for Anita.
So this is happening while Toby's looking up stuff. We assume he's finished his looking up. Does his room have clear glass doors
Into
his
the
bedroom,
kitchen.
so he can see Anita's charging station?
It just happens to be where his bedroom is. It is an odd setup.
But glass, kind of this frosted glass doors.
Sliding frosted.
I don't know that any teenage boy should have frosted glass doors into his room. But he's standing around in his underwear again.
Standing around, which we've seen him do before.
Yeah.
And he's, kind of lying awake in bed. He gets up and he goes into the kitchen, and where Anita's sitting in her go-to spot, and says, "Hi, Tobe." And he gets a chair and he sits down next to her.
And then he puts his hand on her leg. And then he starts moving his hand slowly up her leg.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he gets nervous and leaves. She just adjusts her skirt.
Straightens her dress.
Mm-hmm.
The sex chip, as far as we know, is
Been
still
pocketed.
Yeah, still in Han's pocket somewhere. In a drawer.
Cut to...
Hub Mart.
Yep. Is it Hub Mart or Hubot Mart?
It's Hubot Mart.
Oh.
I'm just short-forming things.
We're just trying to get through this quickly, so you're like, I'm going to take out a syllable wherever I can.
And I've heard it referred to as the Hub Mart, I believe.
Okay. And you have heard that in your circles?
It was said, I'm pretty sure it was said in the show.
I'm sure you're right. Anita and Inga are walking through the store. Anita takes Inga's hand.
Yeah.
And they come upon a hubot. I love the hubot mart. I love all the weird little displays of the different kinds of
Well, they walk past
hubots.
clowns this time.
They walk past clowns. That's new. I know, the clowns we did not see last time. And they approach one where they look at the price tag, and Anita asks how much did she cost. And it's funny that Inga tries to reassure her value. And she's like, you were expensive. She wants Anita to feel good. She wants Anita to feel like it's oh, we really wanted you, or
not, we got you free because we got Vera.
Which is again Inga trying to sort of create this story for Anita that she's part of the family, that they wanted her, that it was a very deliberate choice or something.
And she asks when she asks how much she costs, they're standing in front of Samantha, who our greasy sales guy and owner,
right,
Jonas Boberg, comes back, and he says that they are looking at a social hubot by R.D. Kupling.
And I looked him up. Is that what you looked up?
I didn't, but you're going to have to tell me. But I wanted to give the model, because I like giving the model. The PHDES
she's a PhD.
009A5X.
That's the social model.
Limited to 1,000 units.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you looked up R.D. Kupling?
I looked up R.D. Kupling because the way he said it, I wondered if that was an actual writer, or there'd be some sort of gravitas to the reason that that's the person who wrote the backstory, which she reveals as this bohemian lifestyle in Paris.
And something that she couldn't get over happened to her when she was 19.
Yes. There are no mentions of R.D. Kupling online other than to real humans.
I feel like R.D. Kupling is a character we may meet some.
I'm wondering, because he got the cool job. That'd be a cool job, writing the backstories for the hubots. And Mimi Anita, in seeing Jonas, kind of does a double take, or not a double take because she doesn't move that quickly, but
she has that auditory memories.
She has auditory memories. She's looking at him, and she starts to hear. She hears him in her mind. She hears him saying, "I'll sell it on the street."
Yeah, you can always have sex with it.
Yeah, and they're leaving the store, and she's
zoning out.
She's zoning out and bothered or sort of transported to this memory. As they're walking out of the Hub Mart, someone is offering balloons, and Anita takes one.
Yeah.
They leave the Hub Mart, and it cuts back to Leonard, who in his basement room has hidden Odie under bags of cement.
Oh, yeah.
And he's lifting these bags off, and Odie's mushed into a box and goes, "Hey, Leonard," NBD, just trapped under bags of cement. Mm-hmm. And Leonard, he's like, "What do you want to do?" And Odie's really cute in this episode at this point, and saying "Oh, we could play cards, we could just chill."
Yeah, I like how Leonard clearly now has to hide his beer in his.
Yeah, he can only drink beer in his basement.
Yeah.
Room, and he pulls out some fishing rods and clearly has an idea. He distracts Vera. He like shouts up the stairs. She's mid dusting.
Yeah. And
asks her to go look for something.
For his green coat.
Yes. And
and then they run out the door.
Odie is in the most adorable little gone fishing outfit. He's wearing like a little vest and a little hat. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And they go to the car.
Sorry, gone fishing. Gone fishing.
Yes. Thank you.
People love whistling.
Everyone loves whistling.
They do.
I can't whistle.
Oh, you can't?
No.
That's sad.
It's sad. I can sing, but I can't whistle.
Anyone can whistle.
No.
That's what they say.
Not I. They're loading up the car, and Odie is like just throwing shit in the back. Almost slams the trunk on
Leonard's
on
hands.
Leonard. It is a very This is a bad idea. They get in the car. Leonard is being very reckless and not thinking about his safety. Odie backs into the trash
driving,
can.
because Leonard can't drive.
Odie's driving. He backs the car into the bush. And Leonard says, "Drive like hell," and they go like kind of
Towards
careening
Scotland.
down the street, and it's just like that's not going to end well. And then it goes back to, I mean, the last scene.
See, this I would have put. I'm going to cut this part out and put it right after where she takes the balloon, because this is sort of, it ends the episode, but the Lodi and Leonard thing is much more interesting.
It would be a cute end than them driving
Yeah,
off to the
driving off.
distance.
Mhm.
But the last shot of the scene is Anita sitting at her spot in the kitchen in a new outfit and with a new headband.
Is she wearing a new outfit?
She's got a little floral headband. She's wearing a white shirt and a skirt, dark skirt.
Okay.
And she's still holding her
Balloon.
Hubot balloon that she got that day, and she just turns her head and looks over, and it ends.
Yeah.
How is any of that? Like, what are we talking about?